Welcome back, guys. So, moving on from our last video, I have painted the interior. No, I haven't really. What I've done is I've primed it, and I've primed it with Tamiya's XF85 rubber black. It's a really nice deep dark grey colour, virgin on black, obviously in its name rubber black, but it's not pure black. So I've just basically given all surfaces a good solid saturated coat, and I've also painted the interior of the roof, making sure I got inside the refrigeration unit on the top, just to get rid of any light spots of plastic. And then the yellow you're seeing is Tamiya tape. So it's just 6mm Tamiya tape I've used to mask off the air conditioning unit on the ceiling, and then this fuse buzzer box here on top of the transmission tunnel. The rest of it is going to be a green color. We've got the dash painted in black. I'm actually going to paint it in green, and then we'll pick out the dash panel, the instrument panel, and this black removable panel here, and the steering wheel we'll pick out in black, but we actually need to get the bulk of the dash panel painted green. We've got the interior of the doors, so they're all painted black, so the only bits that's going to be black is this little panel here, and the window winder handle and the grab handle from the inside, and I think the door lock as well is black. We've got the two front seats. Now all the base and the metal units on these is black, and I'm just going to leave this color, and I'm going to brush paint khaki on the seat back and base. And then we've got the rear bench seat. Now this base unit here is green, and then the rest of it is khaki, but what we can do is we can use some of the pre-shade I'm going to do on the base unit just to give it a bit of life. Now another interesting thing I did find out is this base unit here, when you look at the back of it, you've got this metal framing. Well, this is actually a bunk. So this is one bunk, and this is another one, and there's some wires that come down from the roof, clip on either end, and this folds up, and that's you getting two bunks for the crew to sleep in. So that is that, and the last bit is this filtration system here. These cylinders are white, and actually these pipes, the plastic pipes or rubberized pipes, are a bright blue color, interestingly enough, and the hanging pipes here are just like an olive green, and the pipework that services them is black. So we'll just pick that out with a brush once we've painted the interior. So what color I hear everyone say? Well, NATO green would obviously be the natural choice for a NATO vehicle, and it's an interesting color to match. Tamiya do NATO green, so they're XF67, which is a nice green. It's very bright. But I tell you, another green that's very close is XF58 olive green. So that would be a good substitute if you want to use it. But I'll stick with NATO green. But we've got to remember that once the doors are on and the windows are in, there's not a lot of light going to get into this. So we need to kind of lift the colours a little. And to do that, we'll do a bit of pre-shading. And for pre-shading, under NATO green, my favourite colour is Tamiya XF4. And that just lifts the green, because obviously green is just a natural lightener for yellow is a natural lightener for green, and this is yellow green. It's like chromate yellow, so it will naturally give us some highlights and help us accentuate the shade. Now how are we going to do that? Well, we do that in what they call a zenithal highlight. So we need to be very, very careful and basically spray down think how the light's going to enter. So it's going to enter through the windscreens and the side windows. So all these high corners we need to paint with yellow and then fade it down into the shadows. The back you're not actually going to see an awful lot because the bench seat's across there, but what we can do is just dust the paint downwards so it catches all the top edges of the framing, and then when you come to paint the green over it, you get the natural dark shadows underneath it and then the lighter green paint on top. So you're basically forcing a shadow, so you're basically tricking the eye to thinking it's more three-dimensional than it is. And I know it's a three-dimensional object, but it's small, so we need to highlight the differences to then draw your eye in. And then once we've done that and we do a wash over it just to highlight those areas, and we do a bit of dirt work on the floor with pigments, then it will give you a really nice weathered finish. The ends of these pipes, I don't know if you can see them very well, but the ends of the pipes need to be painted aluminium. So that will be a little flash of colour in there for your eye to pick up. This gear lever, this is aluminium colour. The gear selector is black, and the surrounds that they sit in are black, but we can just paint them in. The pedal, that's black, and that's an aluminium arm on the pedal with a black pedal. So there will be these little flashes of colour to grab our eye, but we need to try and force the colour or force the tonal variation on the green just to add some interest to the model. So what am I going to paint with? Well, I'm going to paint with my usual trusty Galeri Premium Mobius 0.2. Excellent little detail airbrush. I've had this for a year now, and it has never let me down. Very reliable and very consistent, and that's what I like with a good quality airbrush, is consistency. You know exactly what you're going to get each time you use it. Spraying about 15 to 20 psi, if we can alter the pressure here on the MAC valve on the front. And we'll flush the brush through with a little bit of Tamiya X20A just to kind of lubricate the needle and make sure there's nothing stuck in the paint cup. And that's spraying really nicely. Starting with XF4. I need to give it a good stir because I haven't used this in a while. It is a pre-thin pot. It's one I've used before, so I've already thinned it. Always stir and mix your paints. You want to get that pigment off the bottom of the jar up into the carrier medium to get a really good well mixed paint. That will also help in your consistency of paint finish. If you don't mix your paint properly, you then get an inconsistent finish. You'll get shiny spots, you'll get flat spots, and it's one of the biggest mistakes of new modelers is not mixing the paint. So give it a good mix. I'll just pop a little bit of thinners in there just to help it on its way. You can also get for Tamiya, you can get acrylic flow improver, which I recommend you using. For a 500ml thing of Tamiya X20A, you probably need about, I don't know, 5 to 10 ml of a flow improver, but it will help. So after a good mix, a little bit of extra thin and a good shake, add that to the color cup. I'll just get a clean bit of kitchen towel. I just use that to do a bit of test spraying. There we go, got the colour coming through now. Nice and consistent, tight lines. Right, so how we want to do this then. Now we don't need to zoom anymore. So what we want to do is imagine you're spraying sunshine, basically. That's how I think about it. So you're coming in through the windscreen. So you want to get this corner here, hard edge, and around the corner there. and just let it fade. There you go, so you get that nice fade going in towards this piece. That's you forcing the shadow down around the side. Yeah, so on the side we want to come in through the doorway. So you just aim for the edge and then fade it down to the floor. Paying attention to the corner edge there, because that will catch a bit of light. And you want the bulk of the colour on that edge. So you can see there, it's faded. It's a job to get it so you can see it in the camera here. See the fade going down to the floor. So that's creating shadow. Same again on this side here. A little bit of sharpness there, where there's a bit of, and then in here there's a bit of a step. So I'm going to paint that. So anywhere there's a bit of raised where the sunlight's going to catch, you want to highlight. And then fade it down to those shadows to really enhance the shadows. And don't worry if you think you've overdone it, 'cause chances are when you paint the green over it, it's not going to be that visible. So you're going to paint a little bit of highlight on the floor, just in the footwell. Simulate a little bit of worn paint where the feet are going to be scrubbing. Door's edge here. And then in around the back here. Just where the feet are. A little bit of marbling. And then on the back of the transmission cover, you want to paint in top edge, fading down to the bottom. Now, these side panels here, we want to work at the top and fade down to the bottom. And this is why you don't need a high pressure, you can work low pressure here. It gives you a bit more control. And then paint along the framing, and you see how the airbrush is just picking out the raised framing. And that's where the zenithal highlight comes from. You're forcing shadow in there. There you go. So that's that one nearly done. We've got nice bright top edges of that framing. And then shadows everywhere else. Side panels, same. And just pick out the framing, get that highlighted. And then same on this side here. Now realistically, you're probably not going to see very much of this at all. However, it's just good practice to do, because you can use this technique for the exterior as well as the interior. So if you can just hone your skills and use a place that's probably not going to be so visual to practice, by the time you get to a place that is visual, you'll be really, really good at it. Right, roof sections. Realistically, you know, roof's going to be on like that. You're not going to get a lot of light in here, but we will do it same as down in the lower sections, just to keep that consistency. So just a very, very fine spray pattern, working along that framing, giving it a good solid colour just on the top surfaces. And just blend that colour in there. And you want the shadow along the bottom edge here, because that's where it's going to be mating up to the cab, so that's where the shadow would naturally be. And then we can just come and put some colour in here, just to simulate a little bit of wear and tear. Focus in the centre of the panels, leaving a little bit of shadow towards the framing. And just take your time. Nice, smooth, opaque layers. Don't flood. So you're only just using a very small paint flow on your airbrush. Very small movements of the trigger. This is why this is really good to practice your trigger control. And it technically is a safe place, because, you know, if we need to, we can just come back in here and blast over the top cover and kill back all this pre-shading. Again, you're making random movements. That's one of the hardest things for the human to do, is make random movements with a paintbrush, because our brains like to make patterns out of everything. So you really do have to try and train yourself to be as random as you can, just to add that inconsistent highlight, which then makes it look more realistic, because nature in itself, although it's full of patterns, tends to be a little more inconsistent than what our brains like to make up. So just doing this paint like this is really, really good practice on your airbrush control. Little dust coat over everything. There we go. So we've got the roof panel highlighted, and we have got the interior highlighted. Time to change paint. So I'll just pour back what little paint there was there. Me being a frugal fellow, I like to keep my paint and use it as long as I can. Don't like chucking stuff away. Airbrush cleaner. For airbrush cleaner, I just use basic IPA. It's actually surgical alcohol I'm using at the moment, because I had a couple of things I needed to get rid of. So for Tamiya XF paints, it works perfectly. Obviously, if you're using lacquer-based paints, then you need to have a proper cellulose or lacquer-based thinner. I use Tamiya, so I can use alcohol-based thinners. Right. So a little bit of fresh X28 in the airbrush. I think this is a new pot, is it? Or is it a used pot? No, this is a used pot. That's good. Again, this is pretty thin, but I'm going to give it a good stir with my trusty old stirring paintbrush. Get all that pigment off the base of the paint and up into the carrier medium. It's reasonably thin, but I am actually going to thin it again a little bit. It's obviously been a while since I've used this pot. So a little bit of X20A. And this is X20A decanted into a 500ml laboratory liquid dispenser. Bought off of Amazon, so I highly recommend you do it. Saves you having to worry about pipettes and stuff like that. Just gently squeeze the bottle and it squeezes the fluid out of the nozzle. It's a very fine delivery, so it minimises splashing and you don't waste any. And price are in these days, you can't afford to be wasting this stuff. It's very expensive. Right, so loaded up our airbrush, just a little bit of a backflow. So just put your finger over the air cap, push down on air, pull back on the trigger, and it forces air back through the nozzle. Helps you mix your paint. Check your flow. Happy days. Right, we may as well start with the roof. Seems it's the easiest one to film. So what we want to do is just want to come in with a nice even coat. And you see it does not take much, A, to change the hue of the colour, but B, to lay down that paint and colour the part. So go in both directions, make sure we get everything a nice even colour, and I'm going 90 degrees to the part. So very nice thin layer, and when it's just about painting out the pre-shading, we stop and let it dry, and you'll watch that pre-shading come back. Same again here. So just nicely smooth, even coats. Down the sides. And it is critical with this that we get all the areas painted. We don't want to leave any black spots or anything like that. We want to get a nice even colour coat over the whole interior. Hopefully you can see the detail is popping out. Make sure you get a frame around the doorway. Just spray in the doors so we get an even colour over the transmission cover. There we go. Pretty good. See there's a little bit of highlights there. And the back. And there will be as it comes through, dries through on the transmission cover. We've got a nice bit of tonal variation. And we've got a green interior, which is ideal, because that's what we need. Right, we need to paint the inside of the windscreen. These sun visors are going to be black, so we're just going to pick them out and brush paint them. So just come in with all the angles and make sure you get everything painted. Seat, as I said, we just need to paint the bottom section of the seat. You see how easy that is now that we've got the seat fixed with a kebab skewer. Dead easy. We need to paint the interior here and here, just in case anyone's looking down through. We've got no dark spots. Now what we can do is we can come in here because we're going to paint this khaki. Same thing, just paint that upper edge. Just put a bit of a pattern on there. That will help stimulate or simulate a little bit of wear and flex in the cover. We can do the same here along the front. That's good enough. A little bit of shadow there. Right, inside of the doors, I'm just going to paint all of that green. Probably should have taken the time to highlight this. But you can actually do a bit of pre-shading with the paint itself. Now when that dries, that should come through. So even the differing layers of paint itself will change the hue. So the more paint you put down, the brighter the color. So if you're doing a bit of pre-shading with this color, then those areas that we've already painted, when you come to put the top coat over, you're just going to enhance the color there and leave a forced shadow. There we go. Nice even color coat. And the dash, the last bit to paint. Now we can be reasonably accurate with this airbrush, which means we'll only have to touch in around the dash. If I'm in the frame. Oh, actually out of paint here. Wonder why I wasn't getting anything out of it. Right, so hopefully you can see now. If we look at the roof, we've got a nice little bit of tonal variation coming in there. That says it's dried. I'm quite happy with that. That just gives us a bit of something. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray some wash over this just to finish it off, and it's going to be an acrylic wash from Citadel. Now, being green, we can either use a dark black coloured wash, or we can use a sepia wash, or we can use a sort of a darker browny wash. The choice is ours, and I'm probably going to use the earth coloured wash. Alright, so there's the dash painted. So what I need to do next is come in with a black to pick out the detail. Pick out the detail on the doors. Then we've done that, we can think about unmasking the bits we've masked already, and then maybe dry brushing and washing. I'll see which order I'm going to do it in, but yeah, I'll decide that in a moment. But anyway, that's the paint down, so I'm going to clean up the airbrush, and then we'll come back and we'll look at what the next steps are. So see you in a moment. Guys, so I've actually decided to go for the wash on the door. You can see I've just sprayed that on. and used a brush to streak it down the way, so we've got a little bit of dirt and grime on the inside of the door. These things in theatre will get dirty, especially if they're in the desert. So basically what I've got, I need to top it up a little bit more, is I'm using Citadel's Agrax Earthshade, which is really quite a nice, it's like a dark sepia tone, dark brown. Yeah, it's nice for doing what I want it to do, and that is just to give a bit of definition to the colour, add in some forced shading and highlight around the base of the raised detail. So we don't need a lot. Same air pressure as we were using before, same airbrush, just cleaned it out. You can see how little I've got in there, just in the bottom of the colour cup. And all we're going to do is just do a straight pass over. You do need to give it quite a good coverage. This is a bit of an old pot of paint. You can see that there has fairly changed the hue, darkened the paint down, and added shade and shadow around the raised detail. And what we can do is we come in with a brush if you want, we can stipple it with a big flat brush. We need to work quickly though, because being an acrylic it will dry quickly. What we can do, I don't have any water, silly boy, you can moist the brush with a little bit of X20A, and I mean a little bit because you don't want to reactivate the paint. So you come in with a bit of moist X20A and just stipple and leave. Let it dry, let it cure, otherwise you could end up smudging the paint. So just stipple and leave. And this stuff does react quite quickly to X28. If you wanted to make it easier to move this stuff around, you could put a gloss coat down first. Well, that's going to give you a really used grime look to the roof of this cab. You can see that when that dries, that's going to dry very blotchy, patchy, and look like it's been well used, gotten a lot of grime and dirt, dust. These things, when they're in theatre, especially if it's a desert type theatre, dust is the enemy for everyone. Gets everywhere. So there we go. It's given us a very dirty looking roof panel, which is fine because we'll do something similar around the floors. It'll be interesting to see how that actually dries off, because it will tone itself down. But you can see there's been a couple areas where we've gone through the paint into the primer below. Adds a little bit of interest, but we can come and touch that in if we feel like it's just too much. We'll show you how to bring that back. That's quite a nice finish, that actually. You can force dry this with some air. So just switch to air. Just blow air over where you've been. That'll help give you an idea of what it's going to end up like. And as you dry it, you'll get a better impression of our handiwork. So there we go, that is a very grimy looking roof. If you want, you can come back in and spray a little bit more in, just to knock back the highlights. Worst comes to the worst, if you don't like what you've done, just come in with some green paint, blow it over, it'll be all gone. I'm actually quite liking that. That's given us a really nice grimy look. Well used in theatre. tonal variation. There's obviously some hardened pigments in this paint because there's little minute blockages in the airbrush, but we'll let that dry, and I think that's good enough for the roof. Right, interior. So basically same thing. We just want to come in and blow it all in, all the surfaces, nice wet coat, and let it pool up. And we're going to come in with the brush straight away, a little bit of X20A just to help keep it active. Not too much, because we don't want to activate the paint too much, and we want to focus on the floor where the feet are going to be. Because that's where all the grime and the mud stain and stuff's going to be. Boots getting in and out. Again, randomness, that's what you want. Lots of randomness. Just go careful that you don't burn through to your primer coats below. A little bit here on the side, not too much. You're going to get a bit of kicking on the side and stuff like that, so there you can see we've got nice discoloration on the floor there. Really grimy looking. Scuff, scrapes, dirt. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that actually. The walls I've just left alone because they're not going to get as harsh a treatment. So we can just worry about them, but the floor is the bit I really wanted to get dirtied up. The walls we can if you want. Just rehydrate my brush with a little bit of X20A. What we can do is just once and down on the walls. Once and down, don't touch it again. And that'll give us some streaking. That'll help with that overall sort of grimy look. Try not to let any X20A pool, otherwise it will burn through to your primer coat. So we're going to actually have to come back in and touch in the green, I think. We need to put a little bit over the base of the seat. Run out. Damn, missed the airbrush. Happy days. You can brush it on, so it tends to go on a lot heavier with the brush. So you can put it on and then take it off. You can see how that is going to give you a natural sort of streaky grime effect, and if you want we can brush it on the back as well. Just to help with that sort of streaky grimy look on the seat base. So just draw it down, let it make its own patterns. Stipple it here, and then when we paint over the khaki on top of this, it will end up that we'll get, this will all add to the sort of pre-shading effect. There we go. Yeah, that's looking too bad, that. Just draw those streaks down and make them flow. Right, so we'll let that dry, and then the last one to do is the instrument panel. Again, we'll just give that a quick brush over, going sparingly with it this time, as I don't want to flood all the detail. All we want to do is highlight the raised detail. There we go, that's that done. So we're going to let all that dry, and then we'll come back in and get some a little bit more detail work done. I am actually going to blow in just a little bit of green here where I've overcooked it, and we've gone through to the plastic. I've put too much thinners on, so I'll repair that, and then we can come back and think about getting the rest of the detail painting done. So see you in a minute.